Welcome to Moments with Marianne. This is your host, Marianne Pastana. We're here today with special guest, Billy Van Zandt, who's here to share with us his new book, Because It's Funny. So do you know this comedy mastermind that's behind many of our favorite TV shows and plays? So Billy Van Zandt is one of the most widely produced playwrights in the world, celebrated for his contributions to comedy theater. Van Zandt co-wrote 25 plays with his late partner, Jane Millmore, including the international hit You've Got Hate Mail, the off-Broadway slapstick tribute Silent Laughter, the cult classic Drop Dead, and the enduring farce Love, Sex, and the IRS. So let's welcome to the show, Billy Van Zandt.
Thank you very much. Very happy to be here.
Oh my gosh, what an honor it is to have you here and to talk about this book. So, what inspired you to write this?
This book is all about the plays that Jane Millmore and I have written over the years. We were together 46 years. We did 25 plays, and they're done all over the world now. I wanted to pay tribute to the people who helped us create all those shows. I wanted to pay tribute to Jane, who's passed away 4 years ago. And between that book and my first book, which is Get in the Car, Jane, those two, first one is about the TV shows that we did, and this one is about the plays that we did. And between the two of them, you get a full picture of how we work together, who we are, and a lot of funny, very funny backstage stories of how we put everything together and all the things that have gone wrong and all the things that have gone right and all the great people we've worked with.
Well, I'm so sorry for your loss. I mean, both you and Jane are such creative people. And my goodness, to look at the partnership that you've had, what do you think was your secret sauce to this chemistry that you guys had, this creative chemistry?
We came from two different directions. I was very much into the broad physical comedy. Jane was very much into realism. So we would combine the two. That's the best way to do physical comedy. Anyway, the comedy has to be true, and you have to believe what you're doing, as insane as the stuff may be. So it was a good marriage that way. We started out as boyfriend girlfriend, and after 13 years of breaking up and getting back together, and breaking up and getting back together, we finally, married other people, and we stayed best friends. It's been that's an interesting story in itself. Maybe that'll be my next book, but it was a great business marriage, and we were great friends, and I don't think I would have been as successful without her. I really don't.
Well, I think she would be honored by the tribute that you've written in this book. It's such a great read. You have crafted this so well. Is there a story you can share with us about your combined creativity?
Yes, the broadest show we did was a show called Silent Laughter, which we did off Broadway, and that started all our combination, the combination of all our talents, I guess, changed from show to show. Um, but in Silent Laughter, I wanted to do something broad because I'm a big Buster Keaton fan, and Chaplin and Fatty Arbuckle, all those guys. I thought, God, I'd love to do something like that one day. And Jane said, "Why don't we do one on stage?" I said, "On stage? What are you talking about?" And she said, "Well, we'll just do it on stage." And anything that's difficult, I know is the right thing to try. Anything that scares us was always the right thing to try. And with Silent Laughter, we did a slapstick comedy live on stage in black and white. We did, the costumes were gray, black, and white. We did very broad physical gags that were really tough to do, but luckily we worked with the same people for now almost 50 years, and I have really talented comedians in our company. So we were able to pull this off, the title cards over our heads with the dialogue written on it, like you'd read in a silent movie. And we had a theater organ. A great guy came in, Ralph Ringstad, and he played along with our actions. It was phenomenal, and never would have done it if Jane hadn't said, "Do it, Billy." Do it. So, and she would keep the story as broad as the story was. She kept it grounded, and that made it all the better. And so we introduced a lot of younger people to the great silent movies. And the fun thing for me about that play, it's now done in a lot of deaf schools all across the country, which is really cool for me.
Wow, that is so inspiring. But it also says a lot about the dynamics the two of you had working together because I can only imagine how difficult it was to bring that play to life.
Oh yes. Oh yes. I also realized, even though I pulled it off, I realized I'm not Buster Keaton. I couldn't I couldn't I had to stretch a lot before that show, and I went through Gatorades by the dozen every show. And the fun part for that show for me was it ended with 100 pie fight on stage every night, and that was fun. I we we had trouble thinking, okay, how do we do the pies? Because you can't have real pies under the stage lights. They have to be made ahead of time. They're going to melt and all this stuff. So we ended up getting Gillette foamy shaving cream, and we did those at all the pies because they stayed together under the lights. And I thought we were going to run so long. I bought so much Gillette foamy shaving cream that after the show closed, I was still using that shaving cream like 9 years later because we unfortunately, we opened very close to 9/11, so the theater audiences weren't coming to see any shows, and we lasted, I think, 8 weeks on that show, but I thought we'd run forever on that, so I had but I had a lot of shaving cream after that show.
Well, I'm sure had history been a little bit different, I'm sure that that show would have lasted longer from the sounds of it. It sounds like
Yeah.
such a profound show. And what really drew you to this balance of like humor and storytelling?
Well, both of us started out as actors, and, I was always writing, always when I was 15, I ran a children's theater company out of, a local theater where I grew up, and, but when we were adults and I was out in we were out in California and I was working on a movie and had very little to do and the auditions were few and far between and we said, let's write ourselves a show, you know. So we did, and that was Love, Sex, and the IRS. That's now done all over the world in many different languages, and but that was all about us showing off as actors, really. And that's the first couple shows were like that until I realized, oh, we should actually write a show that the story is more important than what I do on stage, you know. So you can see the if you read all our shows in order, you can see the learning curve of how we learned to write. Uh, but all the early shows were farces. I was uh, I was inspired as a kid. I was inspired by Lucille Ball and I Love Lucy. I studied that so deeply. I learned how to write by studying the scripts and how they structured them. I learned timing by watching the actors. I learned camera angles. I learned everything from that show. And our early shows were a lot like those shows. They were very broad farces, and about our sixth show in, we started veering off into doing things that was like, oh, what if we do this? What if this sounds scary? Let's try that. We wrote a musical because we thought we'd try it. Nobody told us we couldn't. Um, both of us were always. I sort of equate this to the Lucy Ricardo character in a weird way. Um, I've always jumped in with both feet and then figured out how I was going to do something. Um, and that's paid off. So if something scares me, I want to do it. If I'm not sure about something, I want to do it. Just surround yourself with good people and try and work with people who are better than you, so it elevates your game a little. And that's been the way we've always worked.
I think the one I remember from Lucy is the chocolate factory. I think that's one of my favorites. Yeah.
Too, me too. I got to know Bob Carroll Jr. and Madeline Davis very well, who wrote those shows. And I eventually got to meet and work with Lucille Ball, which was a joy for me. They say never meet your idols, and this was the complete opposite of that. I'm so glad I met her. She was everything I wanted her to be. Um, and I'll tell this quick story about her. When I first came out I had just finished filming Jaws 2, and we were out in California, and I had to do retakes for the movie. So Jane and I were together. We got in the car from the airport, and I drove straight to Lucy's house. She said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I have to. She's the reason I'm doing this. I want to meet her. I want to. Maybe she'll walk out and I can see her or something." We pull up. It was now it's called stalking. Back then, it was being a fan. But anyway, so I drove to her house and I started to get out of the car. And Jane said, "What are you doing?" So I have to meet her. and I walked up to and Jane hid under the dashboard, and I walked up to the door, and I knocked on the door. A houseboy answers the door. I said, "Billy Van Zandt's here to see Lucille Ball." And he slammed the door in my face, said she's not home. Slammed the door in my face. We got back in the car and drove away. 10 years later, I was invited by Lucy to her house, same house. I'm inside. We're talking about all the different people she'd worked with and the Marx Brothers and all this. And I said, "Did you ever meet Charlie Chaplin?" I said, "I can see his influence in your work, but I don't see any, I've never seen a picture of the two of you together." And she said, "No, I never met him, but I'll tell you a funny story. I found out where he lived, and Gary and I, my husband, Gary and I were in Switzerland. We found out where he lived, and we drove to his house. And I started to get out of the car, and Gary said, "What are you doing?" She said, "I have to meet him." And Gary hid under the dashboard, and I walked up the walkway, and I knocked on the door. Big fat housekeeper answers the door. I said, "Lucille Ball's here to see Charlie Chaplin." She said, "He's not home," and slammed the door in my face. The exact same story. It's the exact same story. And I didn't tell her my part of it because we had just, prior to talking about all the other stuff, we talked about the fact that her house was very accessible to the street. And what happens if a fan, comes up and they said, "Oh, with the press of the button, bars will come down over the windows." I thought, well, I can't tell her my story now, or they're going to call the police and kick me out of here. So I never told her. I never told her, but she was great. I really, everything about that whole time was great for me.
It sounds like she would have really understood, though. I mean,
I think
to
so.
have the exact same thing happen, how cool is that?
Yeah, it was pretty fun.
So, I mean, you've done, theater and television and you've also done musicals. So, how is the writing different for all of these?
Well, the in the theater, someone must once explain this to me when I started writing for TV. A man named Sam Bobrick, who'd written a bunch of Broadway shows, he sat me down. He said, "You're a playwright, right?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "Well, let me explain the difference between TV and theater. In the theater, you're the top of the pyramid, and everybody working on the show is working to please your vision of the show." He said, "Now you're in television. See the pyramid? You're the blueprint at the bottom, and everybody's going to do what they want with your stuff, and you're not going to have any say about it. They're just going to tell you how you did it wrong the entire time you're doing it." It's like, "Oh, okay, I get it." And it took me a while to adjust. First of all, writing for plays and then going to write a 22 episode sitcom, that was nothing for us. We wrote fast anyway. That part was easy. The hard part for me was having people change my work. I've often told this, and it's true. One of the first scripts we wrote, I had some character came into our script and said hi, and the executive producers changed it to hello, and it was like, what? Why is that better? I don't understand why that's better. And somebody explained to me that when you're on a writing staff, your job is to imitate the writing of the executive producer, so every script sounds like it's coming from the same voice. And it took me a while to get that. And when you're in charge of your own show, then everybody has to write to make it sound like your voice. That's the trade-off. But it was frustrating for me the first couple of years, ever watching everybody dissect everybody's scripts. And it's like, oh, ours was better. If you left that, it would have been better. If that kind of thing drove me crazy. But back in the theater, nobody tells us what to do. We produced our own shows. I directed them. So, the only people that told us what to change were the audience. We'd rehearse and change things in rehearsal, but really the only real person I listened to was an audience. And if something's not working, you hear it and you fix it. And our shows were never set. To this day, if I ever do one of our shows, I'm always rewriting them just to try and make them better. I've never written anything where I went, "It's perfect, we're done." Um, and and I hear Jane's not with me anymore, but I still hear her all the time saying, "That's not funny. Change that. That one's good." I can. So we're still working together, even though she's not here.
Well, on that note, we're going to pause here for a quick break. We've been speaking with Billy Van Zandt in regards to his new book, Because It's Funny. You've been listening to Moments with Marianne. We'll be right back after these messages from our sponsors.
Are you an author, speaker, or expert who is looking for more publicity? Visit radioguestlist.com and sign up for free interview requests from shows looking for guests. Radio Guest List is the #1 free booking resource for radio, podcasts, and TV talk shows who are looking for experts like you right now. Visit radioguestlist.com and sign up today to get the visibility you deserve.
There comes a moment when you realize you're somewhere special. When you discover that each beautiful creature that you see has been rescued from a life of absolute horror and brought to this incredibly free place. Here's where their lives were forever changed and where yours will as well. Discover over 500 tigers, bears, and lions at the brand new visitor center at the Wild Animal Sanctuary just outside Denver. For more information, visit wildanimalsanctuary.org. Discover true freedom at the Wild Animal Sanctuary.
It's one thing to become attached to your perfect home, but what do you do when that home becomes attached to you? A family in dire need of a fresh start, a mysterious house tied to the past. Buried deep within the foundation of the old Far Hill Manor lies a centuries-old secret. Dark forces or something stronger just waiting to be discovered. Caretaker, a supernatural thriller by breakout authors R.J. Halpert.
Internationally recognized and award-winning author Judy Goodman works and teaches outside the box of limited thinking. Working with people from every walk of life, her goal is to empower you to be the best you can be, no matter what the challenge is. Born with the gift of seeing beyond our normal vision, she has an extraordinary gift of working with every challenge. Teaching beyond conventional wisdom, her work is described as life-changing. Visit judygoodman.com. That's judygoodman.com.
I'd like to thank Jason Eastwood at Guitarfulness for sharing his inspiring music and talent with us. His music is known worldwide for cultivating atmospheres of harmony, inner peace, and clarity. Visit Jason's website at guitarfulness.com. Join his newsletter, be part of his community, and download his music. Welcome back to Moments with Marianne. We're here today with Emmy-nominated writer and producer Billy Van Zandt, who's here sharing with us his new book, Because It's Funny. You've worked with so many just phenomenal actors and comedians. Have they influenced any of the plays that you've written?
Yes, producing the plays came about. The first few shows were done in a dinner theater. So it was Kathy Reed and Dennis Lynch ran a very successful dinner theater in New Jersey. This was at the height of dinner theater, where any restaurant that had 3 feet of space, a stage would go in and you do a show there. But and I also say if it was a show where they were all sex comedies, if somebody ended up in boxer shorts or a corset, we did that show somewhere. And I collected people along the way, because people I like working with. I've done this through my whole career. If somebody that I like working with, I want to use them again and again and again. Why, life's too short. I want to have a good time. A lot of times when we would write, I'd always, and I still do this, I write for specific people, whether they end up in the roles or not. I want to hear, every character should have its own voice. So if I write this role for Tom, I wrote that role for Glenn, and I can hear them doing it even though they haven't done it yet. And it makes the writing much better. As far as producing, the first time I produced on my own was we had done the show called Drop Dead, which is a very successful cult kind of show all over the world now. And we had done our first production of it, and a guy came up to me out of the audience and said, "Is this going to New York? Because if it is, I'm going to write you a big fat check. I want to be part of this." I hadn't thought of that, but I immediately said, "Of course it's going to New York, and I'll be happy to take your check." And I started going around raising money, and I went to my parents' friends and anybody I could get my hands on. And within 3 weeks, I look back on this, and I'm very impressed with myself that I did this. But back then, I didn't. I was fearless, I guess. And in 3 weeks, I raised enough money to do an off-Broadway show, and we went up to New York with our cast from Drop Dead, and we did a 6-week show. And it was only 6 weeks long because that's the length of the shows we had been doing in the dinner theater and stuff. And at the end of the 6 weeks, and we got great reviews, all that sort of thing. And at the end of the 6 weeks, I gave all the investors back their money, and we all went home. It never dawned on me we could have kept running the show. So, so that was my first bit of producing. And after that, I knew how to produce. I knew how to raise money, and anytime we needed it, that's what we did. And I also stupidly wrote a lot of checks too. I always invest in my own shows, even if it's a little bit. So I don't feel comfortable taking your money if I'm not putting my money in it too. Um, there are times I've written the entire check, which was, when I was doing TV and you're making TV money, you don't think about that. Now I think about that. I'm not doing TV right now. Producing in the theater helped me produce in TV because everything you got to think fast. Writing for the theater and especially the children's theater and the farces, the paces are fast, but you're also writing them fast, and time is a problem all the time in television. So I was able to do that easier by doing all the things I'd done in the theater too.
So I'd be remiss if we didn't talk about this typewriter that you smuggled into a movie set. I'd love to hear about that.
I was in the first Star Trek movie. Robert Wise had directed it, and he cast me. And it was the first time the guys from the TV show were getting together again to make a movie. And Leonard Nimoy, who was Spock, was not going to do the film. I think he was holding out for more money, but at the time they said he's not going to do the film. And I was the other alien on the bridge. And I had this big bumped head and, had yellow contact lenses. And it was a big pain in the neck, makeup wise, maybe 2 hours a day because of the secrecy of the film. They didn't want anybody to know anything about it. So I was trapped in my dressing room. I couldn't go to the commissary to have lunch. I had to stay in my dressing room so nobody could see my makeup. I don't think it was legal, but that's what they asked me to do. So I did it. And I called up Jane. I said, I'm bored out of my mind here. It's like I'm in my dressing room, or when I'm filming, but most of the time I'm just sitting here. I said, bring my typewriter, before computers. Bring my typewriter. She brought it in, and we wrote Love, Sex, and the IRS in the dressing room on my typewriter with alien makeup on. That's how I did that. And while she was there, I said, "This is ridiculous. I'm going to sneak you onto the set. Come on, I'll sneak you onto the set. You can watch us film something. Stand in the back here behind these lamps, and nobody can see you. Just hide here, and you can see through the thing, and you can see us." So I brought her in, did that, and as we started to shoot a scene, William Shatner goes, "Cut! Wait a minute. There's somebody back there." I thought, "Oh God, I'm going to get fired." And he said, "You can't see from back there. Somebody get this girl a chair." And they put the chair right next to the camera, and Jane sat there, and we shot our scene. So I've always loved him just for that. And but between filming and in the dressing room, that's where we wrote our first play. And again, we wrote our first play because we weren't doing much as actors back then.
Oh my gosh, that is hysterical. I love that. I absolutely love that. What do you want readers and our listeners to take away from Because It's Funny?
How much fun it is putting on a show, how much love they should have for community theater, who do most of our shows. Um, if you go on our website, there's a thing called Around the US and another one called Around the World. And if you click on it, you get a map of the world or a map of the United States. And little red flags start to pop up on all the cities that have done our shows. And you'll see that it's an entirely red United States of America. Everybody has done our shows, and around the world, there's a lot of spots too. To the point, which I'm very proud of, we broke the app. So the cities that pop up are only from 1979 to 2014, and then we broke the app. We can't get any more data in there. We've talked to the guy who created it, and he's like, "Oh, no one's ever put this much data in here before." But so anyway, but you can see that it's kind of fun to do. But what I want them to take away is, if you're a theater, every chapter is a different play broken down. You can see, oh, this would be good for my theater. That would be fun to do. But yeah, I want you to see how much fun we have. I want you to see how serious we take comedy, because a lot of people think anybody can do it, and you really can't. I think you're born with it. You hear it. It's a musical. Comedy has a rhythm to it, and I think there may be some pointers along the way of how to do farce, which would be great. And I really want them to take away the company of people we've worked with through the years, and I hope they honor them in their own way just from reading the thing. Um, and I also want them to take away knowing Jane, because I think between the two books you get a really good picture of her.
Well, and let's talk about the first book, Get in the Car, Jane.
Yeah,
So, what is that book about?
that was this started about God, how long ago? I was writing. My kids weren't sure. They knew the plays because they would come to rehearsals and they understood theater, but they had no idea what I did at a soundstage. And whenever I would do a TV show, so I wrote a little essay about Suddenly Susan, the Brooke Shields show, and I broke down how we put it together and all that. And I thought, well, this is kind of fun. And I found that I had taken journals. I had written journals on every single TV show I had worked on. Never did that before, and I never did it after, and never about anything else. But the TV shows were so chaotic and stuff. At the end of the day, I'd write something down just so I could remember it. And I went through all these journals and decided this is a book. And I put together. You learn what an executive producer or showrunner does. You learn the job as I learned it because the first show we did was Newhart, and I was a staff writer on that. And what I learned about that show. You also hear backstage stories, a lot of celebrity gossip in that first book, and it really turned out to be fun. I was number one on Amazon. It's filled with a bunch of crazy stories of how you get a TV show on the air, how you work with a studio, how you work with the network, how you work with some divas that you wish you didn't work with, that kind of thing, and how you do your job. And it's I think anybody, you don't have to be TV related or theater related to like that book, because everybody at some point has been frustrated at their job because of extenuating circumstances. I think they can relate right to that in the book, because putting together a sitcom, I often say, I don't care how bad a TV show is when you see it on the air. I'm happy for the person that got it there because I know all the hoops they had to jump through to get there. Um, so good luck for them. Good for them. Because the frustrating part of working in television, which is all throughout the book, is you're getting micromanaged by studio people and network people who have never done a comedy in their life. They don't know how to work an audience. They don't know what's funny, what's not funny. But they're telling you what to do. So you have to sort of get through it. One of the reasons I did TV and theater at the same time, I would do the TV and I'm answering to other people, and they're right, they're paying for the show. And then on the TV hiatus, I would go back to New Jersey and introduce a new show. We did that 33 straight years. New show every May and June. That's how we introduced our shows. Then we'd either take them to New York or we just publish them and let other people do them. It was the TV stuff was really interesting to me because some of it was fantastic and a few things were not so fantastic, and it's all in the book.
Is there a behind the scenes moment you can share with us?
Sure. Let me think. Yes, one of the worst shows we did was not our show. We were hired to do this show, and we were supposed to be co-executive producers, which means you're second in charge. But the showrunner did not know what they were doing at all and wouldn't take advice from anybody. So you would work 7 days a week till 4 in the morning on a terrible show. And you couldn't change anything because this person couldn't make up their mind one way or the other about anything, not even what to order for lunch. So I one night at 3:30 in the morning, I'm staring out the window, and a writer next to me says, "Billy, what are you thinking?" He said, "I'm thinking I wish a car would drive through this window and kill me." And he paused for a minute and he went, "I'll get my car if you promise I die too." So we we immediately bonded there. We immediately bonded of friends for life after that. But I'll tell one story that I really love. I did Bless This House with Andrew Dice Clay and Kathy Moriarty. I love Kathy very much. Andrew was fun in his own way, but he was a lot. And every week he would he would by Thursday we start on Monday, we'd shoot on Friday, but every Thursday he'd cause some sort of commotion on the set. I said, "What is that about, Andrew? You don't, he didn't know his lines. He would show up late. It was always on Thursday." And I realized that's because he had to know his lines and didn't. So he'd make up some sort of excuse to stall and all that. So one week we had the Broadway legend Elaine Stritch on the show, which I loved. I loved her. It was a very difficult week. She was tough. That's the first day the AD picked her up, the PA picked her up. "Good morning, Miss Stritch." She said, "There'll be none of that." We get to the studio and she sees a couch. "Get that couch out of here. I'm not here to entertain people." Okay. So it was that kind of a week. And then on one Thursday, I'm called down to the set because she had a problem with something. And I see Andrew sitting quietly in the corner. I said, "Wait a minute, Andrew, come here. Every Thursday, you show up late. You don't know your lines. You're a pain in the neck. Why this week are you suddenly so professional? You're on time. You know all your lines. What's the deal?" And he pointed to Elaine Stritch and went, "There's only room for one." So I will say it was the best show we did of that season. She was fantastic, and I would have worked with her again. But so you never know how things are going to go on a week to week basis. But there's always something going on.
It sure sounds like it. Well, both your books are just phenomenal reads.
Thank you.
Oh my goodness. Yes, Billy. And where can our listeners connect with you and be part of your community and learn more about your work?
You can go to our website, which is vanzantmillmore.com. You can see all the different TV shows we worked on. You can see all the different plays, and there's connections to, if you want to look at scripts and that kind of thing. So pretty much we're contained right there. Yeah, you'll find us on vanzantmillmore.com.
Well, Billy, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show with us here today.
A pleasure. You were fun. Thanks.
Well, thank you, Billy. It's been such an honor to spend this time with you and to talk about your two books, Because It's Funny and Get in the Car, Jane. Both books are available at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and everywhere books are sold. And remember, support our indie bookstores. Well, we're at the end of our time today. I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in. You've been listening to Moments with Marianne, where we make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Marianne is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary, a recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Marianne will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmarianne.com for more information.